Wow.
Wow, thanks.
Full house tonight. Well, it certainly is a pleasure for me to be here with you. I have been spending the last few days researching you. And, you know, not that I wasn't aware of you, but, you know, I did sort of discover that you are somewhat of an enigma, Miss Allen.
I am?
Yes,
Really?
you are. I mean, you have worked steadily in this business in theater, film, television, from the 80s up until the present day. And somehow you've managed to sort of stay under the publicity kind of hype machine radar, you know, that so many actors today seem to use to kind of forward their career. Mm-hmm. And instead, it seems to me that you've forwarded your career with your talent and just such respect from this business for what you do. I mean, there just is, you know. But I wanted to kind of, since I feel like I know so much about you now, I want to take everybody else through this little journey that I've had right from your humble beginnings.
Oh, yes.
Back there in Rochelle,
Yes,
Illinois.
yes.
Well, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. I mean, your family, etc.
Well, I'm the youngest of 4 children. I have 2 sisters and a brother. I have one sister who's 16 years older than me, a brother 13 years older, and a sister 2 years older. So my parents basically kind of had same parents, almost 2 families. And my dad ran a gas station. The population, Rochelle, is about 75 miles directly west of Chicago, but it's not suburbia. It's small town America surrounded by cornfields. And my dad ran a gas station in my hometown, and my mother was a homemaker. And that's kind of, I started doing plays in high school.
Very humble, really, beginnings. Yeah. I mean, and you also say that you were really shy, right?
Yeah, I was pretty shy. Not maybe as bad as Laura Wingfield, but you know, I was. I was more introverted, I think. Definitely.
Right, and so. What drew you into acting then? I mean, what sparked that interest in performing?
Well, I think a lot of actors actually are kind of, not all, but are kind of introverted people, and sometimes they have all these things kind of going on inside them that they feel that they can't really express in normal ways in day-to-day life, and a stage kind of provides an outlet, right. I think, for a creativity or a sense of expression that maybe normal people just do, you know, as they live their lives. I don't know.
Do they? Do they really?
Whatever normal
I don't know
is.
normal.
Who knows what normal is?
So was it high school that you first really got into acting on stage?
Yeah, you know, I think I from a younger age, I think I knew I wanted to perform somehow, but there really, you know, I took ballet lessons and, you know, I took piano lessons and did very poorly. And I think I knew I wanted to perform somehow, but I wasn't really sure what that was. So I was also a cheerleader in junior high school, and that was, you know, in small town America, that is a form of performing. But I didn't make the cheerleading squad in high school, and it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I went over to the theater department and saw they were auditioning for what was called contest play, which is like speech contest, except it's a 1-act play that you put up and you rehearse, and then you take it to different schools on the weekend and you perform, and it has, you know, competition, and you go to regionals and sectionals and state and everything. So that was the first play that I did.
Oh, okay. Was there a moment where you sort of it hit you that this is what you wanted to do?
I think it was then. I think it was when I got in that play called Once Upon a Playground, and it was about a bunch of misfit girls. You know, one had orthopedic shoes, and I was the one who had braces, though I didn't really have braces, so they painted black enamel braces on my teeth. And then this new girl comes in, and she has a big nose, and they call her the girl with the funny nose, and they ostracize her and all this stuff. And so there were a lot of, there was one male role in it, and the rest we were all girls. And I think I knew immediately in rehearsal that was really what I loved doing.
Did you share it with anybody? I mean, did you go home and exclaim to your parents, "This is what I want to do"?
I don't know if I did it like that, but I certainly was enthusiastic,
Yeah.
and I probably did say something like, this is really what I'd like to do.
I always wonder about that, because I remember that moment for me, just briefly. I was a dancer, and I came in and I thought, I'm going to perform. That's what I'm going to do in my life. And nobody could have cared less.
Yes.
I was just like, but you don't understand. So it's always interesting, and it's good, to have that reinforcement, definitely, from your parents, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, they had a certain amount of skepticism, I think.
Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah, it's...
But then you went on to Eastern Illinois University, and you
Right.
enrolled in the drama department there? Or?
Yes, it was a small state university. My sister was going there to school, and I think maybe part of my shyness, I was very close with my sister, who was 2 years older. It seemed to be comforting to me that she would be in the same school that
Right.
I was in. And it had a very small theater department. It basically taught students to be teachers. And so you had to have you had to take a wide curriculum. You couldn't just focus on acting or performance. You had to take scenic design and costume design and all these things. But because it was a small department, also I was able to audition right away for the main stage show, and their star actress happened to be a student teaching that semester, so I got to, as a freshman, play Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest right away on the main stage.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
I loved the idea of being able to perform. I wasn't really interested in schools where you had to wait until you were like a junior or senior to
Right.
be on the main stage. I really wanted to just keep doing it.
Right. And is that where you met John Malkovitch?
Yes, he was a student there, 2 years older than me, and that's where he and I met and
And what
became
was
friends.
that like when you
Wow,
met
it was
him?
wild.
Speaking of enigmas.
Yeah, he was about the most exotic thing I'd ever seen. I was like, whoa.
In what way? I mean,
Well, he was wearing purple platform shoes and like this kind of Romeo shirt, with puffy sleeves that had an open tie and his chest was exposed, and like raspberry colored pants, and he lived in a house with a woman who was bisexual, and I mean, it was just
I'm not in Rochelle
I'm
anymore.
not in Rochelle anymore. Where am I? So he was really, he was very exotic to me, and I guess maybe it was, after I was in the play, and he wanted to do an acting scene, and he kind of pulled me aside one day in the lobby and wanted to do a scene from After the Fall with me, and so I did it.
The scenes that you have been doing, these things on stage that you've been doing, have been sort of intense from the very first. These odd mismatched children in a playground to, it goes on and on. It's
Yeah.
so interesting. And so he invited you, actually, right, to join the Steppenwolf
Yes.
Theater Company.
Yes. Steppenwolf actually started at another state university in Illinois called Illinois State University in Bloomington, Normal. And John decided for his last year of school that he would transfer to Illinois State and go there. And Terry Kinney and, Gary Sinise didn't go to school there, but his really great friend Jeff Perry and Laurie Metcalf, they were all seniors, and they were planning Steppenwolf the last year of their schooling at Illinois State. And they saw John and were just like blown away by him and invited him into the company, so they all graduated, and then they started the theater. And
So did you follow a couple of years later, or?
well, about a year later, John, I went and visited John a couple of times and met the people during my junior year of college, and met some of the other actors, and was just like amazed at the talent of the ensemble members. And then John invited me. One of the actresses in the company decided she wanted to become a dancer, so she left the company, and they needed an actress. And John called me, and we were doing this insane Wally Shawn play called Our Late Night, which is about an incredibly bizarre cocktail party that John had found the play, and so I went between my junior and senior year in college, and that summer I did the play with them. The theater was actually in a northern suburb of Chicago called Highland Park, but they rented a theater space in the city that summer for that particular play. And I went and I did that, and then I went back to school for one more year, and then joined the company permanently.
But the company was pretty new at that time, right? They'd only been around for, what, a year or something like that? Is that... So
yes.
You were sort of pretty much involved in the inception.
They kind of grouped me in with the beginning, but though I didn't, help formulate, but they kind of put me in as a founding member, though, technically I'm not.
So after you went back to university and then went back to Steppenwolf, did you moved to Chicago? You lived there, you did the theater full-time, or?
Well, I did. I lived for a short while in this northern suburb when the theater was still in Highland Park, and then after a year, the theater moved into the city permanently, and we all moved down to the city at that point from the northern suburbs, and I was a full-time secretary to make money at an educational film company in Evanston, and
it's sort of the same line.
Yeah.
There's a thread there somewhere.
Exactly, but I was behind the typewriter, not in front of the camera.
Right.
But they were very, very nice to me, and let me, when I was in rehearsal, they would let me go for the month of rehearsal, and then as soon as the play would open, I would start work again and work all during the day, and then do the show at night, and I did that for like 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many members were there in the ensemble?
At that time, there were about, I think, 10, around 10 or 11. It was pretty small, but a couple years after I was with the company, we added, like 6 or 7 people. At one point, we realized that we needed more ensemble members.
And how many productions would you do, say, at a time? Would you do only one at a time, or would you do several at a time?
It was really just one at a time. We had a subscription season, and we would, have endless meetings. It was very democratic to the point of like, can somebody just take control and make a decision?
Right.
Endless meetings, just deciding, all these things. It was a little too egalitarian for a while.
So you actually did have a paying audience and all that.
We did,
stuff.
yeah. We did have a paying audience, though we didn't get a paycheck for a while. And then once we started getting paid, it was, like $80, $75, $80 a week or something like that. That's why I needed to subsidize with a regular job. And we would pick our season of like 5 plays, and because there were fewer women in the company, we got to act like more than the men almost. So on average, I would be in like 3 out of the 5 shows. Maybe 4 out of the 5.
Were there writers also involved with Steppenwolf?
Well, not really. I mean, there was a wonderful writer named Dan Orsini, who was from Illinois State, who wrote a couple of things for the theater. But it wasn't really about new playwrights. It was more, we would try to get the rights for new plays that had done well in New York, or that seemed appropriate for the company.
Right. And so after 7 years, you moved to New York?
Yes, a show that I did at Steppenwolf called And a Nightingale Sang was brought by some producers to New York. The first Steppenwolf show that came was with John Malkovitch and Gary Sinise, called True West. And True West had been done, I think, down at the Public Theater, but the production, as I understand, was not very, very well realized. I didn't see it, but Gary directed a production of it at Steppenwolf in Chicago, and it was great. And he and John were in it, and they were fantastic. And so some New York producers came and saw it and wanted to bring it to New York. And so that's when New Yorkers started coming and looking at what we were doing. And so I was in the second play that was brought from Steppenwolf to New York.
Which, was that the first thing you did in New York?
Yes.
And that was off-Broadway, right?
Yes, it was at the Mitzi Newhouse Theater in Lincoln Center.
You received, copious awards for this. For you received a Clarence Derwent Award, Drama Desk, Outer Circle, Theater World Awards for this rendition, which is pretty interesting. This is your first off-Broadway play, right? Yeah,
it was. But I had worked doing a lot of supporting roles at Steppenwolf and had several years of really just on-the-job training is really what I would call it. And that's substantial, that amount of time. It must have, and intense as well, It was great. It was one of the best times of, of my life. And so this part in A Nightingale saying, actors sometimes have this confluence of the right part at the right time of their own development.
Right.
And that was one of those times for me.
Yeah.
It was just the right part at the right time for me, and it hit.
Was fantastic. But then you did The Marriage of Betty and Boo, and won the Obie Award for that, for Off-Broadway.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing again.
Yeah.
Then, speaking of awards, you did Burn This with John Malkovitch.
Yes, and you guys, I met the cast here.
There they are. The Academy's rendition over there.
Exactly.
And won a Tony for that. Amazing. And this was all in such a short period. I mean, it just seems to me that you took Broadway by storm. You were just immediately,
Well, things are, it's funny how things happen. Actually, Lanford Wilson was the playwright, and he wrote for a theater that's no longer in existence, the Circle Repertory Company. And another actress was supposed to play my part, who was part of their company, but she was going to have a baby and she couldn't play the part. And he had written the part of Pale for John with him in mind, but as soon as she became apparent that she couldn't do it, I was asked to do a reading. John suggested me, and I did a reading of it, and so it was kind of, there are also things that you also can't control. If she had not been expecting a baby,
but
it would have been different.
It happens over and over again,
It does.
doesn't it? That kind of a situation where it's an unexpected thing, you slide in there, and
exactly.
It's amazing. Yeah, and you also, you were nominated for a Tony for the Heidi Chronicles.
Yes.
And also during this time, you were segueing into television and film.
Yes.
In around 1985, I think. The first movie that you did was Compromising Positions. And you did a mini-series with Leslie Ann Warren and Armand Asante called Evergreen.
Yes.
So what was that like? I mean, did you find that transition easy, difficult? What was that like for you?
Very hard. It was very, very difficult. I mean, and certainly in this day and age, I came to film work very late. I think I was like 28 before I did my first film work. And I had just only done stage before then. And I found the technical difference really challenging. And I would say it probably took me really genuinely 5 years before I felt, oh, I get how this works. I didn't understand how you do it out of sequence, and there's chaos, and there are people tugging at you, and combing your hair and straightening your clothes, and you're supposed to have a breakdown, and I didn't understand any of the language. I didn't know what they were saying. It took me a long time to hit my mark and have an emotion and get it all at the same time.
You seem to have figured it out, though.
Well, finally.
You're doing pretty good, I'd say. Yeah, and then, but you seem to work steadily. Obviously, you were appreciated on some level, even if maybe you didn't feel so secure yourself in the work or whatever. You worked constantly, it seems to me.
Pretty steadily, yes.
Peggy Sue got married. Tucker, The Man in His Dreams, The Man in His Dream, both with Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
And then in 1995, you did Nixon with Oliver Stone directing, which I read was sort of like a turning point for you in a sense.
Yeah.
I was going to, before you answer that, I was going to ask you what it was like working with Oliver Stone.
I had a great experience with Oliver. He's he is who he is. Yeah. But I think he kind of, people have said he sort of takes on sometimes he sort of takes on the tone of the material that he's working on. So being on Natural Born Killers would be a very different experience than doing Nixon, for instance. So He was on very good behavior, and he was in a Buddhist phase, and he was. He said he
that
was.
helps.
Yeah, he was.
Yes. Because he doesn't have the greatest reputation as far as directing women,
Yes.
particularly, is concerned.
Right.
So that's nice that you had that experience with him. As a matter of fact, I have a quote that you gave to someone, which I had to share with everyone because I'm not sure who you gave this quote to, but it was. She says, "To tell you the truth, if Oliver Stone had wanted Pat Nixon to wear a G-string and swing from a chandelier, I would have played it that way."
Yes, but there's a but.
She was one flexible actress.
That wasn't as much about Oliver as it really was about my willingness to take direction,
right.
and I like to be directed when I work. I love the relationship with the director. Certainly as much as with the other actors, and sometimes even more on certain moments, particularly in film because it's very intimate, and so it means a lot to me. And I'm pretty game to try most things that a director will ask.
Yeah. Do you think that has something to do with your stage background? Because so many film actors tend to just be in themselves. And a lot of directors, film directors specifically, don't really know what to do with actors, I've found.
Yeah.
They kind of know what to do with the camera, they kind of know what they want the whole scene to look like in the end, but they're a little intimidated with actors.
Yes.
So
I think, I do think the stage work did make a difference. Because you have a regular rehearsal period and you're trying out different things,
and you are so much more intimate with the director, I think. On stage.
In some ways, you are.
In some ways, I mean, they're completely different mediums, really.
Yeah.
So, what was it like for you to play Pat Nixon, a real person?
It was again, that was one of those moments of serendipity or synchronicity or whatever the right word is, of the right part, I think, coming along for me in my particular development as a film actor. And I felt like I knew that woman from maybe a lot of my Midwestern background. There were parts of her that my mother reminded me of my mother, that kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, don't complain, just, get on with it kind of attitude, which a lot of people call repression. But I don't, always agree with that. I don't, people say, you play these repressed characters. Well, I think, spilling your guts all the time is not necessarily that attractive or that interesting, and I kind of like introspection, and I kind of look at it a different way, but I think there is kind of a negative spin on that word sometimes, but I felt like I understood her, and frighteningly, when they put brown contact lenses in my eyes and put the wig on me and stuff like that, I thought, man, I kind of look like her too.
You did. You did look like her.
I look at myself in the makeup mirror and go, this is a little weird. This is a little scary. But
well, the Academy agreed with you that you understood the character because you were nominated for an Academy Award for that role. Congratulations for that too. Unbelievable. What was I going to say about the? Okay, so anyway. Oh yes, I know what I was going to say.
That's okay.
I remember
That's
now.
All right.
No,
I
remember.
lose track of my.
I was going to ask you about the fact that you felt like it was a turning point in your career. Why was that?
I didn't think of it at the time.
Right.
Really, I kind of was just hoping not to be embarrassing as Pat Nixon. I would kind of go every day in my. It felt. I knew just in terms of the size of the part, and that it was more significant than some of the other roles that I had done. except maybe Tucker, that was a pretty significant role. But I wasn't really sure. I was kind of surprised by the response. I was surprised I did not expect to be nominated. I was kind of surprised how it all sort of turned out that way. I wasn't really expecting it. And I felt like I certainly had the edge over Anthony Hopkins because people knew Richard Nixon so much more clearly than they knew Pat. Mm-hmm. She was much more enigmatic. She was much more behind the scenes. I had a lot more latitude, really, than Anthony did. And Anthony would talk about playing Nixon was like harder than doing King Lear. Right. And I understood what he meant. He had a much more challenging, I think, assignment than I did.
Well, I think you both pulled it off very well. So how did this sort of newfound, interest in you manifest itself for you?
Well, I had then, after Nixon, I had then a run of like 3 or 4 films in a row, which were pretty significant, I think. I might have done the Crucible and the Ice Storm. Happened pretty much on the heels of the thing. I love that movie.
Well, I read, in fact, that, the Ice Storm was fantastic. Yeah. I read, in fact, that John Woo, the director,
of Face Off.
Face Off. He didn't do
Ang Lee did the Ice Storm. Ang Lee did the Ice Storm.
Excuse me.
That's
there
okay.
You go.
That's all right.
Well, he cast you in Face Off based on your performance in Nixon. That's what he says apparently. He said Nixon was audition enough. I don't know if you were were you getting offers for the first time after Nixon, or?
Well, I still auditioned. The Crucible, they went on an extensive, I was like the last role cast from what I understand. They went on an extensive, like, global virtual, I don't know, that's kind of exaggerated, but they went to the UK to find Elizabeth Proctor. And Daniel Day-Lewis had been said, and a lot of the other people had all been cast. But apparently, Nicholas Heitner directed it, and apparently it's embarrassing, never saw, read, was in a production of The Crucible, ever. That play totally, eluded me. And I think that was all to my benefit because there was sort of this whole thing about Elizabeth Proctor being played this stock way, and Nick Heitner didn't want her to be played that way. So when I auditioned for it, I had like no preconceived sort of notion of how it's played or what's up with that character. Right. So I think, oddly enough, it worked in my favor. That I really wasn't familiar
And you were
with
nominated for an Academy Award for that as well.
For that one, yeah.
So I think you're right. I agree with that. Yes, I'm right. The Ice Storm was Ang Lee, of course, which is a fantastic movie as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Just fabulous. So you have just basically been going on and nonstop. The critically acclaimed Pleasantville, which was a very unusual, wonderful movie, I thought. How did you feel? Well, tell us about The Ice Storm. I mean, you said you loved that movie. What about it was?
Well, I was such a huge admirer of Ang Lee's work, from Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and I just thought he had an incredible sense of truthfulness, I guess, in performances, and so I trusted him implicitly, really, to make the film. I trusted his judgment on scenes if he would say do it another way, and sometimes I would misunderstand what he would say because his English isn't so good, and I would do the opposite of what he'd asked for, and he'd go no. But ultimately, I knew we'd get something that I think I was pretty sure I would be proud of, And it certainly was true. It was a very interesting experience for me seeing that film for the first time. I saw it in a screening room at Fox in Los Angeles, basically by myself. I think I was alone. Maybe my agent was with me. And I think I knew within the first 30 seconds that it was going to be a brilliant film, that he was just going to tell this story brilliantly, and I wasn't disappointed with what he did. So it was an amazing experience.
Terrific. So Pleasantville, and then, of course, The Contender. Your third Academy Award nomination.
Yes.
I loved the film because it was controversial in a sense. You know, the
A bit, yeah.
sort of the woman taking on this powerful position and then being kind of like chopped off at the knees with some sexual accusations.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that, playing that as a woman?
Well, you know, The Contender was tricky. It was written by Rod Lurie for me. So, you know, that was very cool, you know, and you have somebody write something for you. And the rest of the cast was so good. It's really an ensemble film, I feel, though, in a lot of ways, even though, you know, I'm kind of somewhat featured. I think the men's parts are also very, very important to the story. And, you know, my challenge in doing that role was I didn't want her to seem like a martyr or something, or I wanted her to be human. And so I would keep checking in with Rod, and I'm like going, is this too much, you know, too idealistic, too, you know,
Right.
she is a human being after all. And so
Right.
that was the line that I felt that I kept trying to walk, is that I wanted to make her a person of strong convictions, but I didn't want her to be, I don't know, so, I wanted her to be believable at the same time as a person.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
sort of fascinating also because, I don't know, the whole Clinton thing, it came into play a little
Yeah.
bit at that time, you know.
Yes.
Clinton happened earlier, but it was interesting to see how
Yes.
how it can so affect, something like that can so affect
Yes.
someone's political career
Right.
when it really has nothing to do with politics.
Exactly, and that was Rod Lurie's, I think, point. He's very political himself, and that was his intention, I think, in writing it.
Right. The Upside of Anger with Kevin Costner. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
It was so great. It was great. It was like running a marathon. It was really challenging to play that role. I'd never really done what I consider a comedy. I think there are some people who don't find that film to be a comedy, but I certainly sort of put it in that category myself. So it was really one of the first. I mean, Pleasantville had comedic elements, and I'd done comedy on stage, but to me, and Mike Binder writes comedies basically,
Right.
and so it felt like a comedy to me, or like it should be. So I was a little nervous going into it. I really want to make sure I can pull this off, and all the drunkenness was, all the drinking was.
It must have been exhausting.
It was tiring and fun and challenging, and again, it was a case of having just to sort of stay very open and trust that the director would sort of pull me in the right direction. I mean, we would do takes where we would play around with the level of intoxication, and
Right.
Let's do one where she's really out of it, and then let's do one where she's, as an actor, it was a great acting exercise, I have to say.
Right. I have a quote here too, by the way.
Yes.
It's you say, the best I can do in this movie is to just be brave and dare to be horrendous.
And exactly.
Which I think is something that a lot of actors feel they have to try to go for when they're performing, just dare to be horrendous.
Yes.
And hopefully somebody will say, you're being horrendous, pull it back or push it or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's very important, to stay that open and that vulnerable, and it's hard to try something that could be just horrible,
Right.
especially when tens of thousands of dollars are being spent every minute on a film set. But,
Right.
But someone told me once, and I have no idea if this is true, that 80% of Jack Nicholson's takes are unprintable because they're so bad. But he's allowing himself
Right.
the freedom to try, explore, to fail, to learn something from a failed take, and I
Which
think
is
it's really
so difficult.
It's tough to do.
It just goes against nature
It does.
completely
It does.
because you just want to have everything in a neat little package and
Yeah.
be safe. But as an actor, you really have to.
to try.
Push
because,
that envelope,
yeah,
right?
because you really can learn a lot from a bad take too. You know, you can
Absolutely.
really learn. You know, oh, you know, well now I know. Now I know that's too far. So you know, it gives you some form of measuring. You know,
and this
of
is
measurement.
where the director comes in again, the dependence on the. Do you sit with a director before a project and talk with him about how you work, your technique, or what you expect from him, what he expects from you?
I don't know really. I mean, I don't know that it gets that specific. I think you get a vibe from a person, you know, and you can kind of feel whether you're going to communicate well or not.
Right.
And I think you can tell that pretty quickly. And so I will, you know, maybe say things like, I mean, I personally like to watch playback on when I work on a film. I like to, and Jeff Bridges sort of taught me to use that as a tool. Some actors don't like to, you know, see themselves. And
Some directors don't let the actors
yes,
look.
Ang Lee
which-
does not let you watch, but you know, a lot of directors, most directors do, and if they can afford playback, you know, some independent films don't have the money for playback, but I like it as a tool to do a take, and then you can, you know, when they're resetting, you can kind of go to the monitor and they'll replay the scene,
Right.
and you can watch it and kind of go, oh, ooh, I might want to do this instead, you
Right.
know. I can be pretty objective.
You
that way
can,
and
because
watch it
so
and
many
use-
people, it is hard also to be objective about your own performance.
When
When you watch yourself on screen, do you go, that was a good performance, or that was a bad performance? Can you be that objective?
I don't know. I have moments that I go, yeah, I like that moment, or you know, I don't, you know, angst over it though. I mean, I do have moments that I go, I wish now I would have done something a little differently, but
Right.
you know, I'm not going to slip my wrists or anything.
Right. So, what draws you to different projects? I mean, at this point in your career, you can pick and choose, I assume, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, how do you determine what it is you'll want to do next?
Well, it's a combination of things, really. But the first, they're getting very close now because I have a 12-year-old daughter. It's the character, but it's also the story. What story is being told, and why is this story being told, and how does my character fit into the telling of this particular story? And is it something that is new and kind of different and maybe is going to challenge me in a way that I haven't been challenged, you know, before? So that is kind of key. So it's the key, it's really the character and what the character's doing, but it's also what is the story about, because you know, I might find a really interesting character in something, but if I didn't believe in the story somehow, I think I would find it hard to commit to do it.
Right.
And then very closely after that is who's directing it. You know,
I was just going to ask you
it's
that.
very
Does that
closely.
play?
It's very
Right.
important to me. I would not be able to work with commit to work with a director that I felt at all uncomfortable with, or you know.
Have there been directors that you felt uncomfortable with?
Very few, very few. But there.
Did you feel that your work reflected your relationship with the director? Looking at it, if it was on film, looking at it after
of the
fact?
ones where I had a
where
it was
you
more
had
challenging?
a director that you felt you weren't in sync with?
Yeah. I think maybe in one case, you know,
Do you want
I
to
think
share
my
it?
work came out better than I thought.
Oh, is that right?
Than I thought it would,
Yeah.
you know, because it was just, he was an inexperienced director, and there was just something about the way he communicated, and it was at a time when I was still developing as a film actor, and I felt vulnerable, and I needed, you know, I needed a secure director, not somebody who was insecure.
Right.
And that didn't help me at my particular point of growth.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that you have that sort of realization about yourself, that you know that you need to, you know, it's not just about you as a performer. You need to have a support system around you,
Yes.
or ideally you have
Yes.
a good, strong support system around you.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
interesting to me. Do you have any favorite projects or plays that you've done?
Favorites? Well, And a Nightingale Sang was was probably my favorite play ever. Favorite films, well, I think in terms of a finished product, The Ice Storm is my favorite film as a whole. Though I think a lot of the films, the directors have done amazing jobs putting them together. But probably this film that I did with Sally Potter called Yes was an incredible experience. And
why is that?
Well, she works on I don't know if any of you, if you're familiar with her work, you must, the Tango Lesson and Orlando, and she's really more of an artist than anybody I've ever really worked with. She's does everything from coming up with the idea to writing it to, she spends anywhere from 3 to 5 years on every film that she does. And so that's long for any director. And so it was this film was her response to September 11th, and it was a love story between a Western woman and a Middle Eastern man. And it was all written in iambic pentameter. It was all rhyming. And she had done, she felt like she had done films that had a lot of visual aspects to them, and she was interested in doing a film that was very verbal in counterpoint to what she had done previously. And we had a 3-week rehearsal period, which in film is unheard of, but it made all the difference. It was amazing to go to her office and sit and work with this incredible actor, this Armenian actor who grew up in Beirut and lives in Paris, and I was the only American in the film, and we shot it in London.
Right?
We shot mostly in London, and it was just, it was a very enriching professional and personal experience to do.
That's what we like
and
to
do. It's a very interesting film, so you can rent it, actually.
Yeah, I have it at home at the moment. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
If you want.
Do you have any plans to return to the theater?
I don't at the moment.
No?
But, never say never, so. Anyway.
Do you miss the theater?
I don't, really.
You can't say that in New York. Why not? What about theater do you not miss?
Well, I don't miss doing it 8 times a week.
Oh, right.
I have to say, it's really, I found whenever I was doing a play, even though it's deceptive because you think, oh, you're only doing it at night, you're only as good as your last performance, and it's always on your mind on some level or another. Your whole day, at least for me, and maybe other actors aren't, able to not function this way, is based around, okay, well, I'm doing the show, so I get up now, and then I eat, and then I'm going to work out, and then I'm,
Right.
Every choice you make then I better take a nap, and then I better, every choice you make during the day is about,
Right.
getting ready to go into the ring.
So your day does not start when the curtain opens. It's
leading
up to
it's
that.
all kind of leading up to it,
And you have a daughter.
And I have a daughter.
At 12. Have you worked on stage since she was born?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
Because that would be a huge commitment.
Yeah, and missing bedtime is rough. You don't
Right.
like missing.
It's
missing
the worst
bedtime.
time for a mother, particularly a father as well.
It's
but
hard
parents,
to miss bedtime.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've been very busy recently as well, haven't you? I mean, you've completed a movie called Good Chararma.
Yes.
Which, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Wow, that was amazing. I have a small part in this film, currently called Good Chararma. I don't know if it's going to keep that name or not, but I'm the only American actor in that.
Was that shot in London as well?
No, it was shot in New York. Most of my scenes were in New York, but also in India. And so I got to go to India last December, which was an amazing experience.
Where in India did you go?
Well, we were shooting in a little village outside of Bombay, about a 6-hour drive outside of Bombay. And I only shot for 2 days, but I got to take my daughter, and we made it kind of a trip as well as a life experience as well as a work experience. And it's based on a true story. It's a lovely story that what made me really want to do it is it's a film I would want my daughter to see and a lot of people to see, but young people. It's based on a true story about an Indian cab driver who lives in Queens. He still lives in Queens and still drives a cab. But he put a collection box in his cab to donate money to build a school for girls in India, because a lot of girls in rural India still do not go to school. And so I play a journalist who gets a hold of the story and writes about it, and it helps to sort of get it a little more visibility. So this school really exists now. It wasn't where we were shooting. But the woman who was the costume designer on the film had started another school basically by taking donations. So it was like a labor of something that I really believed in, a story that I felt was touching. And Billy Connolly is in it. We were the only white people in it. and this fabulous Indian cast, these wonderful Indian actors who were just fantastic.
Have you ever been to that part of the world before?
No, that was my first time.
So what was that?
It's
amazing, just amazing.
It's amazing. I highly recommend it to go. I highly recommend going. I mean, I don't think I would have gone had my work not taken me there, and now I just don't see how, I would have really missed out on something very big by not going. The cultural experience was just...
Did you visit the Taj Mahal?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We went to the Taj Mahal and we went to Jaipur and you just see everything on the street imaginable and we didn't get sick, so that was good. It was
I was
a great
there
experience.
as a young girl in 1972 with my family. We were doing a lot of traveling at that time, and what really sticks in my mind is not only the Taj Mahal, but the incredible poverty at that time.
Yes.
I don't know what it's like now.
It's unbelievable.
It's just in your face all the time. And then we would go to a restaurant and eat this amazing food with gold leaf on it, edible gold leaf.
Yes.
It was kind of hard to put it all together.
It's a really fascinating culture.
Right.
I'm so glad that my daughter went as well to experience it. But it makes New York look, when I was coming home from the airport, it's like, this is such a little town. I mean, it's so quiet here. There's so much noise, there's so much traffic. Everything's like right in your face.
Wow.
Animals and camels and people and, dogs and, it's...
Cows just wandering around. They're sacred,
and everybody
so they can do
lives
whatever
right
they
on
want.
the street, and it's amazing.
So, moving along, you finished Bonneville with Jessica Lange and Kathy Bates.
Yes.
Which should be released in
Hopefully,
September.
yeah. I might go to some film festivals. It's an independent film.
It sounds. I read this story outline. It sounds sort of quirky,
Yes, it's three Mormons in a Bonneville convertible.
That sounds quirky.
It was really fun. The basic story is Jessica Lange's husband has died, and it's a second marriage for him, and her character is a lot younger than him, and his daughter from his first marriage wants her father's ashes, and if Jessica doesn't give them her father's ashes, the daughter will take away Jessica's house. And so Jessica doesn't want to give up the ashes, she wants to scatter them, and so we go on. We're supposed to fly the ashes. Kathy and I play her friends. We're supposed to fly the ashes to California from Pocatello, Idaho, but Jessica decides to drive us instead. And so I'm the most devout Mormon in it, the most practicing Mormon.
So it's a Mormon road trip.
It's a Mormon road movie. We pick up a guy along the way, we go to the Salt Flats, we go to Bryce Canyon,
that's funny.
Lake Powell, these amazing,
it sounds
beautiful.
Like fun.
It's really beautiful.
It must have been so much fun.
It was great. It was. They were wonderful.
Yeah. And so you begin shooting Bourne Ultimatum.
This summer, yes.
This summer, the sequel to Bourne Supremacy.
Yes.
You're hitting the blockbusters now.
Yes, yeah.
Very exciting.
Yes.
And you get to shoot that in Berlin, right?
Well, actually, no, I don't think so. Tom Stoppard is doing the revision of the script, but we're waiting for it. They keep saying, is it coming, is it coming? And half of it shoots here.
Oh, is that right?
If it stays the same. I was also supposed to shoot in Morocco, but now they say that we're not shooting in Morocco.
Oh, that's too bad. I'd love to go to Morocco.
London. I know I was a little disappointed. I really wanted to go to Morocco, but I think at least half of it shoots here, and
which is convenient,
which is nice because
I
I seldom get to live at home and work.
Right.
Very seldom.
Right, right. So have you ever taken time off on purpose?
Yeah, I have. You know, when I was expecting my daughter, I didn't want to act. I thought that I didn't want to put myself through bad emotional states, thinking that it could permeate the membrane or something. I don't know. I didn't want to be doing turgid, tortured sort of things while I was pregnant. And I really, the first year of her life, Nixon, I did a small part in this film, which I've never seen, with Drew Barrymore. I can't even remember the name of it now.
Yeah, it's...
what is it?
I have it here. I do, I have everything
I know.
here.
What was it called? And Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did
Mad Love.
Mad Love.
Is that it?
Mad Love, that was it.
Mad Love. Woo! We love that movie.
And then I basically I didn't work till my daughter was like 15 months old or something.
Oh, nice though.
That Nixon was the first thing that I did.
Did you have a good pregnancy? Being a mom.
I did. I did.
Because you could really enjoy pregnancy as well.
Yes.
Because your body does change so much.
And
you feel all sorts of different things. It's nice that you could
and I allowed
take
myself
that all in and enjoy it.
I did. I gained a lot of weight.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe.
I did. No, I did.
Was there ever a time that you thought you might not work again?
Yeah. I mean, I think every actor sort of feels that at some. I think that's normal, or I mean, I had a time where I kind of wondered, do I want to keep doing this?
Oh, is that right?
And it was really after Heidi Chronicles, where I'd done 2 really long back-to-back Broadway runs, and I felt a little wrung out, and I was kind of questioning, do I want to do this? And then, but I had some time off and chilled, so it was all right.
And then you got to do more movies, and that was fun.
Yeah, and that was fun. Yeah.
I read something where you said when you mentioned it as well, when you first started acting, it was sort of an outlet for you emotionally, and you could live vicariously through your characters.
Yeah.
Do you still sort of feel that when you're acting? Do you have that passion?
I don't think I feel it quite the same way in terms of thinking of it as, an outlet for something that I couldn't express in life. I think it's evolved. I mean,
You've had lots and lots of outlets now.
I've had lots of outlets now, but I haven't gotten it out now. It's not coming out,
Yeah, right.
I think I did go through a period where I was kind of like, well, and this was several years ago. I think maybe during this period after I'd done this Broadway work, I was kind of like, I don't want to be doing this on a stage. I want to be living a life, having a full emotional human life, day-to-day life. Am I channeling things inappropriately,
Right.
And then I kind of got over that. I got through that. But I think it's, I still find it a wonderful way to live your life, to meet people, to travel, to collaborate. I've gotten to meet and work with really interesting, wonderfully talented people in places that being from my little hometown, I never would have gotten to go to, and played interesting characters.
It's an amazing life,
it's a great. It's a great way to make a living.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Does your daughter have any aspirations to be an actress?
She says no. She says absolutely not. She wants to be a singer, though she is playing Lady Macbeth. In a version, she's 12, and She's playing Lady Macbeth. Next week, if you want to go to Calhoun School at 81st and West End. No. But she says she wants to be a singer, but she has started doing some plays at school, and whatever. My job, I really feel, is just to observe her and see what develops in her of what she loves, and hopefully nurture that and help her be able to do that.
Right. Well, how do you juggle all that? Your career and your daughter, and do you bring her with you?
During the summer, if she's not in school, she comes. But as Jack Lemmon said once, how many films did Jack Lemmon do? I don't know. 80, 100. If you do one a year that takes 2 to 3 months, you're unemployed 9 months of the year. And you still have a lot of time, even if you do one film a year. You have, and in fact, I kind of, it's hard for me when I travel to leave my daughter, because I'm in, the longest I've been, it's like I'm in London for 2.5 months, and it's not like you can come home on the weekend.
Right.
Or for your one day off, because often you're working a 6-day week. But then when I am home, I'm really
there.
You're
present.
I'm here, and I may not work for 9 months, and so you really, it's
and her
deceptive.
father, I assume, contributes enormously.
Enormously,
right?
Enormously, and she stays with him, when I'm traveling, and he's wonderful, and then he has periods where he might be working on something, and then I have her, and
right.
and we really,
So you don't think she's suffered for?
I think not too much. She says, "Mom, get over it. I'm used to it. Don't worry, don't sweat. It's really not that bad."
Right.
I think I have a harder time sometimes leaving, and she's kind of like, it's the way, it's all she knows. She said, "Mom, it's the only thing I know." So
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I think we as adults forget sometimes, that the children are a clean slate.
Yeah.
And it's what you expose them to that they know and are comfortable with.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So I think I finished all my notes. There were a couple of more quotes here about you.
Yes.
One from Campbell Scott, who directed you in Off the Map. He says of you that she has the combination of intellect and an unexplainable sensuality that's frankly a very powerful aphrodisiac.
I like that one. I'm going to call him about that. I didn't know you said that about me.
And you starred with Brian Cox in Manhunter, which was really the first version of...
it's the Red Dragon, actually.
Oh, is it called the Red?
But
was it originally the Red Dragon and then called Manhunter?
They called it Manhunter.
Oh.
Yes, and then they remade it in the last couple years, didn't they? Which I haven't seen.
Right, the first installation of Hannibal Lecter in our lives, and Brian Cox played him, and he was also in Born Supremacy with you.
Yes, yes.
He says, Joan Allen is the finest actress he's ever worked with, and one of the best in the business.
Oh my God, Brian.
And I think that's true.
Well, thank you.
And so I have no idea what time it is. I went on and on and on. We have to wrap it up? Oh, we have time. Okay.
We have time. We're good.
Whew.
All right.
Sorry to go on and on. I was so I have to ask all these questions. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of questions from the audience as well.
Oh, great. Cool.
This one is from Ashley Alexander. She says, who was your biggest inspiration when you were first starting out, and why?
I think probably Katharine Hepburn was my biggest inspiration. And I think I remember one night sort of stumbling on Long Day's Journey into Night as the movie, and I went, oh my God, what is this? I love this. This is amazing. What story? Her performance in that film made a big impact on me.
Her acting and just her as a human being was such a force to be reckoned with.
Yes.
An amazing woman.
Yeah.
This one is from Aldo. Did you learn anything special from working with Anthony Hopkins in Nixon?
Oh, yeah. I think I learned from, where is Aldo? Where are you? Hi. Yeah, I think I learned pretty much from everybody that I work with, certain things, you know. And one of the things that he talked with me, because the first time I had to play a drunk scene in a film was when I played Pat Nixon. And I was kind of pretty nervous about it, I have to say. And I toyed with bringing just a bottle of wine that had that much wine in it. You know, maybe if I just give myself. And I was talking with him about it at lunch. And he said, "Oh no, Joan, that that never works." And I said, "I know, and I don't want to do that anyway, because the challenge is to do it without being in that state." So he talked me through a lot, the whole scene about being drunk, and how most drunks are trying not to be drunk, so you're fighting it most of the time rather than buying into it. And he.
So then it's the challenge of being drunk but trying not to be drunk.
Yes, exactly.
As opposed to just being drunk.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
and not really being drunk when you're trying.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
it's got to be one of the hardest things to do, I think.
It's
you have to completely relax into it, I think.
Yeah, you do.
Trust.
But he gave me
dare to be horrendous yet again.
Exactly.
This is from Greta Mueller. Is that right? Muller, sorry. Did you find it difficult finding your character in between takes? Because setup time can be so long.
In the beginning, I sure did. It was very hard, particularly with emotional scenes. I thought
of that question mostly from Upside of Anger. I really, as I watched the movie, I thought, how is she regaining that after the takes?
Yeah, well, that you learn how to do that over time, over being on a film set in time. When I first was starting out, I would, if I had a scene that I had to be crying, I'd start crying, at 8 in the morning, and then, it's like, we're not shooting it until 7 p.m. I had no concept of, of saving it. And you just learn to be more vocal, and you say to the director, when are we shooting this and when is it going to happen, so I can do my thing and be prepared and not blow it. And you can sometimes ask for, sometimes I'll go, you might want to do the close-up first, and so you get it, so that if you go further into a wider shot, it doesn't matter as much. It's kind of being open about what you think you need, and but it becomes oddly, you learn how to do it over time. You really do, how to conserve your energy, and when you need to, and different actors have different, periods of time when they need to start zoning in. I've had makeup artists tell me, she said, I can just see when you go away and I can't talk to you anymore, even though I'm right here. And usually hair and makeup people work the most closely with you.
Right.
It's a very intimate relationship, and they're usually really great at being sensitive to the process and just kind of knowing once they can't, not chit chat's over and gossip time's over. Now we're really working.
This is from Anonymous. Do you have any tips for working on a Lanford Wilson play?
Do I have any tips for working on a Lanford Wilson play? No. 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 Just do your character work. Like any other role that you would do. Just kind of do your homework and try to figure out what the character's going for. Dare to be horrendous.
Alex Smith wants to know if you have any regrets.
If I have any, yes, of course, we all have regrets. Regrets in terms of?
Mainly, like doing a play that probably isn't great, but you're doing it like when you were at the beginning, or doing something that you know how you said that you did roles that you like the story and you identify the character. Do you ever sacrifice that for something else? And do you regret that? Which is not a bad thing.
I'm trying to think if there's got to be a film or two in there that I wish I hadn't done. Mad Love is probably one of them.
She liked it over here.
Not
You can't think of one that's pretty awesome.
Not really, there was there was one play early in my career that I should not have been doing that role at that time, you know, but it's all a process, you know. I try not to regret too much. Just look at it as a learning experience, if nothing else.
Kathleen, help me, Demarest. Before your fame, what was your experience as a struggling actor? Any advice for us strugglers still at it?
Oh, well, yeah, it saved me. It kept a roof over my head. You know, it's so hard because every path is so different for every actor, you know, and some go to Juilliard and do great, and some are found on a street corner and, you know, get swept in. You know, it's very hard to generalize about that. But I would say, you know, hopefully you're, in addition to struggling for the work you want to do, you're living the kind of life you want to live. And I think that's really important, to live the kind of life you want to live. And you know, if you love, I don't know, playing hockey or something, you know, do the other things in your life that you love, and have good friendships, and you know, just that, I don't know, that's
Keep the
about
sanity to your life,
yeah,
on some level.
Yeah, be
Because
exactly.
it can get insane if you just focus on
on it. So yeah, because I think you can learn a lot from just existing, you know, as an actor,
Sure.
and dipping into other worlds, and so I think that's a good thing to do.
Okay. Kate Lunsford wants to know, how did Rod Lurie get this his script for The Contender to you? And can you tell those of us whom would love to work with him what that experience was like for you?
Rod was a critic before, you might have been aware, he was a film critic before he became a writer-director. And he was based out of Los Angeles. And I've never really lived there. There was a period in the early 90s where I was there like 6 months of the year, and then in New York 6 months of the year. But I would have people, he had this radio show on Saturday mornings, and people would, my lawyer would say, well, I was listening to the radio on Saturday, Rod Lurie was talking about you again. You didn't open in a film, but he's always talking about you on his show. And I was like, I didn't know who he was. When I got the award from the Broadcast Film Critics for Best Supporting Actress for Pleasantville, Rod was a member of the Broadcast Film Critics. He said, I want to present her the award. So he was at my table at one of the hotels in Los Angeles with his wife, and he presented me the award, and then he seated back down and he said, I've got a screenplay. I've got a script written, and I've got a script. And I was like, fine, okay, whatever. You know, send it to my agent, because you never know. And he sent it to my agent, and it was this great script. Yeah. And this was like, this is, for filmmaking, this is like incredible, this is like at lightning speed. This was like in January, and we were shooting in August. Films never happen that fast. I mean, he got the funding, he got everything really quickly. So, I mean, it was very special to me that he had the chutzpah to do that, and he wrote a really cool part, and it was something that he felt very strongly about, and I feel really indebted to him for giving me such a great crack at playing that part.
It's fantastic. Everybody in LA has a script, don't they?
Yeah, it's
waiters,
exactly.
Gas station attendants, dentists.
Yes,
they all have them.
scripts. Exactly.
Laurel Devaney. Yeah, I must have said it right. What are your thoughts on the amount of government funding, or lack thereof, in current American theater? Have you noticed or felt these changes during your career? Can you imagine any solutions?
Wow.
We'll get political here.
Yeah.
For a moment.
Well, I always think the arts are underfunded, you know, and it just has gotten worse and worse, you know. And I think it's a mistake, because there's incredible value, as you know, I'm preaching to the converted here, I'm sure, but you understand the value in the arts and what it is to be a human being and be alive, and what it means not only within the arts, but how you treat others and how you view the world and how you live your life, and how, you know, is reflected a lot in the arts. And so I feel that it's a mistake to short shrift it, and I'm always unhappy when I hear that happens more and more.
Kay would like to stay on sort of a political level here. Kay would like to know if there's any possibility that SAG and AFTRA will join into one union.
I don't know. I want to know that too. We all wonder because it keeps being discussed, doesn't it? You know?
Yes, it does. It makes sense to me. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
No?
I know it. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe at
I
some
hope
point
they do.
it does.
That's my personal opinion.
Yes, exactly.
Apparently,
Yeah,
not everybody shares it with me, however, because it's not happening.
Yeah.
This is from Sava, Catherine Backer. Is that right? Did I say it right?
Oh, Sarah.
Sarah, I'm sorry, Sarah. I thought it was a V. Have you ever felt that being a tall actress has either been a detriment or a benefit to you?
I certainly have felt that being tall was maybe not so, not so great. I was told in Chicago that I would never, I did audition for a soap opera once in Chicago when I was doing theater, and a casting director, and who knows what was, she said, "You'll never work in soaps. You're too tall. Forget it right now." So I was like, okay, whatever.
And you didn't work in soaps, did
And
you?
I didn't. Thank goodness. By God.
She was right.
She was right. But no, I haven't really, I haven't really felt it was a detriment. I mean, sometimes, you're taking your shoes off when your feet aren't shown. So like you're with Anthony Hopkins, I wouldn't be standing next to him wearing these boots. If my feet aren't in the shot, then I would be taking my shoes off. And, there are tricks. There are things that they can do, and, gosh, Nicole Kidman is very tall. Sigourney Weaver's very tall. Uma Thurman is very tall, I believe, isn't she? I mean,
Yes, she
there are
is
a
tall,
lot of tall actresses
What
out
are you,
there.
5'10"?
I'm 5'10".
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There's a lot of apple boxes.
there are a lot of
used.
apple boxes and there are things like
Lot of
that.
low
So
angles.
don't let that deter you.
No, absolutely not. Cam asks, what kind of preparation do you do for a film role? And does it depend on the script and character, etc.?
Hi. It depends. It really does depend. I mean, if it's a real person, I do research. Like Pat Nixon, I went to the Museum of Television and Radio Broadcasting, and I pulled up footage of her, and I bought biographies, and I read about her, so when I played this Mormon, it was really I went a week early to Salt Lake City, and I mean this is also something that's very cool about what this profession offers, because you will dip into a world that you know nothing about, and you learn a lot. I spent time with Mormon families, and they took me to church, and I went to ladies' night, and we baked tamales, we did tamales, and I mean, it was tortillas. Excuse me, we made tortillas. It expands you as a person as well, and so I kind of. And I think the more I act, I think the shyness, it was harder for me to do research when I was first starting, because I didn't want to talk to people and get in their faces and ask questions of them. But the older that I've gotten and the more experienced and the more it's like, oh, what the hell, we're all just people anyway. The braver I've gotten, I like it now, talking to people. So, it really does depend on the role. And then you sit with the script at night and you go over it and you think about it and daydream. I love Joanne Woodward made a quote once, about, because I think she might have studied with Sanford Meisner at one point, but she just said to him, she said, I just daydream about my character and what I think she would do. So again, there are a lot of different ways to kind of get to where you need to go.
Yeah. Juliana Wimbles wants to know, when you were starting out, did you imagine yourself in the position you're in now, where you're able to act for a living and pick the work you want to do?
I don't think I did. You know, I didn't really look. I mean, I was thrilled to be doing what I was doing. But when I came to New York, I'd never even visited New York. I was 27 years old. I'd never even been here before. And I kind of thought, maybe I'll never get to New York in my whole life. And I just kind of, I don't know, I just kept working. I mean, I feel I was really blessed. I came out of school. I got brought into a wonderful company of other actors. I didn't have to go out and prove myself and, pound on casting directors' doors and things like that. I mean, I feel like it was kind of handed to me in a lot of ways, the opportunity. And so I had I had a very kind of nurturing experience, which a lot of actors don't really have. I didn't experience the kind of rejection that, is most common. And that, I think, was very good for me, because I don't think my temperament could have stood, much, of the difficulty. But
And it seems to me that by the time you came to Broadway and got into movies, you had such a solid foundation.
I did.
From your Steppenwolf experience. And,
yes, yeah,
which is unusual, I think.
Yeah.
Really unusual.
yeah.
And I'm really surprised that you spent as much time there as you did.
I did.
Which is fantastic, because
Yeah.
I would assume that a lot of actors would be impatient. Okay, I'm going to do this for a while and then hit Broadway and be a star. But
I don't think any of us really. I mean, there was tremendous controversy within the company when the first play came to New York. I mean, there were at least half the ensemble members were dead set against it.
Is that right?
Because they thought it
Wow.
would destroy the company. And actually, Gary Sinise was one who kept saying, "Man, we got to do this. We really need to expand. We need to keep growing. Otherwise, we'll just die on the vine." And he
Right.
actually had the right perspective, because the company just had its 30th anniversary. 30th anniversary.
That's amazing.
And so,
I know Steppenwolf has expanded a lot
Yeah.
since you were there, but
Yeah.
do you think it's maintained its integrity?
well, I think it has in a lot of ways. It's really difficult to do good work consistently. In any field. I don't care what it is. And it certainly has its ups and downs, and shows that are, and I don't see as many of the shows, that there are many shows that go by that I don't see anymore. But, I think it's maintained and stayed together as long is a real testament to just kind of hanging in there and just rolling with the punches, because you just can't be great all the time. You can,
Right.
especially if you're going to try to take some chances too. You have to sort of be willing to sort of have things, come out different ways at times.
Right. I kind of asked you that one already. So how did you prepare for the discovery of having hated in vain in Upside of Anger? This is from August. And then here she says, personal experience? It's a he. It's a he. It's a he.
Oh,
It could go either way, I think. It's Mr. August over there.
how did I prepare for hating in vain?
Yeah, it feels like the discovery you make in the end in Outside of Anger is very surreal in a sense.
It is.
And I was wondering how you got to that state of mind.
It was challenging, because it was something that I couldn't really pull from ever, and I just imagined that, first of all, it would be really hard to process, even because it's so big, and I kind of used that and just sort of hoped that it was believable. I don't know, because there really wasn't anybody that I could call on to just sort of go, what would you do in this state? And it is interesting. I mean, I mean, I think people do have delayed reactions. I didn't really cry over September 11th till a good 7 or 8 days afterwards, and then I completely broke down. You know, it took that long to just kind of get my mind around the magnitude of it,
Right.
even. And I think that does happen sometimes with people. So I remember I kind of thought about that a little bit. Though Mike Binder did want me to cry, so I did sort of, and we reshot a little bit of the ending where I was kind of falling down in the woods, and he because he wanted a little bit more going on, so he had the choice. So.
I just have a couple left here. Shirley Roca, she wants to know, what are your thoughts on pursuing a career in New York versus Los Angeles?
Well, I think it depends, you know, on really on what you're interested in. Stage work versus, you know, film and television work. There is more television work in Los Angeles, I think. That's just kind of a reality. And so I know a lot of pilots and things will come and cast and do put you on tape and things like that for things in New York, but sometimes it's not quite as good as if you can be in the room with the producers or whoever's creating whatever show. But I think the theater work here is definitely superior, you know, in most of the time. Not that there aren't, you know, good productions in LA, but I just think it's not a theater town. It just never was geared for that. So, but I think Chicago also is a great place to do theater. And what's so good about it, I think, too, I think the reason that the Steppenwolf ensemble was able to develop as much as they were is there was nobody there saying, come and be in this movie, come and be in this, pulling, you know, because there was no industry there, so to speak. I mean, films come there and shoot, and then they may cast from the local pool, but there's not an ongoing film industry that originates, that is a big machine, you know, like it is in Los Angeles. And so you have the chance to just keep working and developing and doing a variety of things and maybe doing roles that aren't completely right for you, but you can try and experiment and stuff like that. I think Chicago is a great place to do theater, and there are a lot of storefront theaters and interesting alternative theaters there too.
I know you live in New York.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you'd spent like 6 months at a time in Los Angeles.
Just for a couple years.
Was that because that's where the work was?
No, it was, my husband at the time was doing a television series.
Oh, okay.
And so he was there like half of the time. But we never gave up our New York apartment. It was before our daughter was born, and we could just fly back and forth, and it was kind of great at that point.
Do you like Los Angeles?
There are parts of it I like, you know, I'm not a snob. I don't go, you know, oh, LA sucks, you know. It's not the lifestyle that I'm the most happy, you know, I like walking, I like being around people, I like living in a city, like I said, that's about other things other than just this business. I like raising my daughter in a really multicultural place. I was not raised in a multicultural place, and I love being surrounded by it, and I love surrounding her with it. I think it's important in our lives, and it means a lot to me. And so, I don't like being in a car all that much. The traffic is really bad there. And it's gotten worse, you know, and it's more, but I mean, I have some great friends that are there, and I have some friends that make it, you know, things are what you make of them too. You know, I've worked in places that people just go, you know, this is horrendous, but you know, you can find kind of cool stuff in most places. A few, you know, have been kind of hard, but Wendover, Nevada is a little challenging to find something redeeming in Wendover, but.
You said at one point in something I read that you felt like you could walk around the city, you take the subway, the bus, whatever, without being...
I took the train here tonight.
You did?
Oh, yeah.
Without being recognized necessarily or not bothered too much by people. Do you think that's a New York thing, or do you think it's because people just don't recognize
I think it's a combination. I think a lot of people don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And I think it's the New York attitude. I mean, people have very busy, full lives here. You know, they lead very busy, interesting lives.
Right.
And they've got a lot on their plates. And so they'll just like, you know, say, hey, I like, you know, I
In
like something
passing.
and go about their business because they've got really cool things to do too, you know, and so you know, I think part of that's the New York sort of attitude, you know, which I really like
Right.
a lot.
Right. Gives you a little
Yeah.
anonymity in amongst the throngs of people, which is always sort of interesting to me.
Yeah.
I recognized you one time.
You did?
About it must have been about 6 months ago
Oh,
at
yeah?
the 84th Street Theater on Broadway. I think you were going to a movie or something with your daughter or something
Probably.
like that.
Yes.
But I didn't say anything. I maintained my cool. Although I didn't want to. I don't know, how's the time going? I don't see a clock or anything. Keep going?
Yeah.
Take some questions. Anybody have some? Oh, well. About this gentleman over here.
I feel really great to be here because I think you're amazing. I mean, you inspire me.
Thank you.
And I had a question about technical performances. Like some actors say you got to really put out no matter what the shot is, and others say save it for the close-up. I mean, where do you stand on that?
Well, I think you always have to kind of do it to a degree, you know. I think I play with, you know, I always try to be good. And it really only applies if it's like a really extreme emotional scene where maybe you have to be all day, you have to be in a state or something like that, where you might want to calibrate it and say, you know, let's shoot this now, you know. But I think you do get an awareness of the shot, and if you go, the shot looks like this and I look like this in the shot, you know, I look like a little ant in the background, you're not going to like spill your guts for that. I mean, it's actually not wise to do that because you should save it. You really should protect yourself. And so it kind of depends on the situation. But knowing what the shot is, I'm always like asking here, here, here. You know, I love the relationship with the camera operator. That also is a wonderful relationship. And they're really cool guys who are camera operators. Most of them are men. I mean, I'm sure there are some women too, but I've only really worked with men, and they're really, in general, a really interesting people, and they love the process, and so it kind of depends. Yeah.
Do you feel like you have any say at all as to what the shot can be? I mean, if you feel like you're at a point where you just need to let it out or whatever, do you ever go to the director and say, can we do a close-up now or anything like that?
I feel like I can talk to the director at this point and yeah, communicate. I mean, I can't really set up his shot.
No, right,
He won't
right.
let me do that. but you know,
Right.
but you block it. You know, you come in and you block it first,
Right.
and so you kind of get all your movements down, and then you go off and get your hair and your makeup done while they're setting everything up, and so. But you know, I think as long as you feel comfortable communicating,
Right.
you know,
All the time,
it's
right?
good. Yeah.
Yes.
I had a question about auditions. You talked about the technical difference between theater and film. So how do you approach that in an audition? Because I feel like you have to be more contained somehow in film than you can in theater, because in theater you're on a stage and stakes are higher, but I guess the stakes are still high in film.
They are, and I don't know if particularly if you're not being taped, you know, I don't know that size of performance. I think it's really just about intention and understanding your character and what you're doing. I mean, I've done some pretty big things in film auditions, you know, rolling around on the floor, crying and screaming and stuff like that, you know. So for one role, which I didn't get after I did all.
But you dared to be horrendous.
But I dared to be horrendous. I dared to be horrendous. It really comes into play more once you're actually shooting, you know, and again, you know, that when, you know, there is a difference in performance if the camera is cutting you here as opposed to getting your whole body, but it's very subtle, and it really doesn't have, I think in your audition you can pretty much just trust that your homework that you've done and just kind of do it, and don't worry about the scale of it. Yeah.
Yes.
I think, well, you know, what Adrian said. I think you're one of the best. And the thing that I think stands out to me the most about what I've seen in your work is this remarkable sense of containment. And almost everything that I've seen you in, it's you're what you're presenting to me now is totally different. It's like there's this containment in every role that you've inhabited on screen, and I'm wondering, is that just your on-the-job training, or is it your personality, or is it something that it's just this? Because you're not at all like
you thought
maybe like I thought you would be, or that because you have this like very jovial presence, and not that you don't in the movies, but you know what I mean. Just
I know what you mean.
I mean, how does that work, or is it just circumstance, technique, personality, mixture of everything?
Maybe I don't really know, but certainly people have talked about this. You're not the first, to talk about containment, and sometimes I think that's maybe I'm shutting myself down on some level once the camera starts rolling, which I'm not thrilled about that I would do that, and I probably have at certain points, which it gives me something to keep working for and working towards. But I also think some of the film I like a variety of films. I like if it's well done, if it's a great story, if it's well done, it can be, I thought 40-Year-Old Virgin was hilarious. I loved that movie. I also think, The Deer Hunter is a brilliant film. I think there are all kinds of movies, and there's a place for all different kinds of movies. And I think Jack Black in, School of Rock is fabulous. I love that kind of broad performance, and I think sometimes that's something that I almost would, like to try to be broader almost than I am. But I also think there are some performances that I really like. I remember seeing The Godfather first, and my favorite performance was Robert Duvall because of his containment. And some performances that Gene Hackman has done in his life. I have been really drawn to this sense of not playing out everything. So I think it's a combination.
It's very, it's overwhelmingly appealing. It's just that it's just so different, and it's just so just amazing.
She's a person.
Yes, right here.
Have any of the films you worked on been improvisational? Or did you ever work with a partner who really deviated a lot from the script or anything like that? No? Not really.
No. Okay. No. I'm not a huge fan of improvisation. I think it can, not that I have seen it work, I don't think I'm particularly good at it, I have to say. I think some of that comes from a strong theater background where you memorize, and your goal is to memorize it word perfect. And so, that was drilled into me for so many years. So if you're saying you can say whatever you want, I was like, I don't know, I'm not a writer. I'm an actor. It's not my job, it's his job. I was used to doing really great writing in the theater. And sometimes film writing is not as good. Often it's not as good as good theater writing. But I still have had, a rehearsal process most of the time, even if it's only a couple of days. Usually it's a week or two, and we're able to kind of work on it. Because sometimes to me, too much improving sounds, there's not a vision then. The story, the writer is the visionary, and we're supposed to fit into the vision of the writer, the story he's trying or she's trying to tell.
I will take one more from that young man over there, and then we have to wrap it up. So,
if your daughter wanted to act, would you allow her to, or would you want her to wait until she's older?
Good question.
That is a really good question.
That's a loaded question.
Is it a loaded question? I would be very careful with her. I I think I have known some great child actors on stage, a few, and on film, who have amazing parents who are very there for their kids and help their kids through that a lot. Because it's hard. You know, you look at somebody like Dakota Fanning, and she's working really, really hard, and she's going to school at the same time. So like when they're setting the lights, I get to go back and relax. And the kids are all going to school. Maybe you know this. Maybe you've had some experience yourself.
Homeschooled.
Homeschooled, yeah. But I think a lot depends on the parents, and a lot depends on, I would be careful with my daughter. I don't think I would necessarily say no, but I would have to know specifically what it was, what demand it would make on her, how she was going to process it, how it was going to affect her life. I'd have to have my nose in there a lot and be really, you know, controlling about the whole thing. And if I felt that it didn't serve her, I mean, I would prefer for her to wait. But, you know, I do know there's some young people who really love it and really want to do it and live and are great, can juggle it all and do really well and be happy. So I'd have to.
Well, I'm sorry, we have to wrap up. What a pleasure. What a pleasure.